Hey, Theater Inspires! Welcome to Make It Sparkle, a series to get ideas and inspiration for your theater and dance shows. This video is about directing and performing in theater, and it features Sandra Joseph. Sandra is a history-making Broadway star, the longest-running leading lady in the longest-running Broadway show of all time, Phantom of the Opera. Sandra is a gifted storyteller, a keynote speaker and performer, and a New York Times best-selling author. Above all, she's kind, generous, and passionate about helping people unmask what matters most in their lives. Hope you enjoy this and get some fresh ideas.
So I was incredibly fortunate to have been given this metaphor through the Phantom of the Opera. You know, I played Christine for 10 years of my life, and 6 nights a week for 10 years, I was face to face with this metaphor, this profound message that I think is so universally relevant. Here I was learning to love someone for who they are behind the mask. Christine sees the Phantom for the first time without his mask, and she's terrified and she runs away. But by the end of the play, she is able to see him through a new lens, through a new set of eyes, and she recognizes the beauty behind the mask. In his most vulnerable moments, she's able to look at him with unconditional acceptance and love. And here's what was challenging and interesting for me as the actress whose journey it was to come face to face with her fear and learn to love it and learn to love him. It was very clear to me that here I am playing this scene night after night where I'm seeing this person in all of his humanity, all of his flaws, all of his vulnerability, and I feel unconditional love and acceptance for him. And yet, I would go home after the show with all of my old judgments about myself, my insecurities, my fear, which I thought, by the way, would disappear once I made it. You know, I'm on Broadway, and the dream came true. And yet, you find out pretty quickly that the saying is true: wherever you go, there you are. And even at the top of my game, at the top of the quote unquote phantom ladder, I was just full of imposter syndrome. And the higher you climb, the farther you fall. So there's always some way that we can feel not good enough. There's always some way that we can get in our head, and it leads to dissatisfaction no matter how successful you become. So the lesson for me of, oh boy, I've got to really give some attention to how I can begin to bring that kind of unconditional acceptance and love to the person I am behind the mask. Not the outward appearance of success or whatever it may be, but the challenge, I think, for so many of us is to really know who we are behind the facade and all the false identities. Not that they're necessarily false. It was true. I was playing the lead on Broadway. Those things are facts that one could use to define oneself. But what I've found, Mitch, is when you hang your self-worth or your identity on any kind of external, any kind of marker of success, all those things are temporary, and they are, in a sense, a mask, because they will all be taken away from us at some point. And it really wasn't until I left the show and I faced a really scary diagnosis. I had a tumor on my brainstem that threatened to take away my voice. It was pressing on a nerve that controls some of the motor function of phonation. And I had to reckon with, who am I without my voice? Who am I without the talent that makes me special, the thing that I always used to sort of identify myself in a way, to separate myself, and to gain so much external validation and value? If that's gone, if my starring role is gone, and also if my father died that same year. So it was one of those sort of perfect storm, bring you to your knees events that sometimes can be the best thing that's ever happened to us in a way, because I had to really drop all of those identities, drop all of those masks, and look at the truth of who I am, which I found in my most vulnerable moment had nothing to do with any of the external things that I thought defined me. And when we get down underneath all of it, we drop into the ground of our being and who we are, we don't even need to feel special or separate. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I found a sense of identity that's inclusive of everything and everyone. I'm part of the living universe, to go really grand about it. But that is the truth of it. And there's nothing that can be taken away from any of us. Nothing that defines us in a limiting way that is, in a sense, a mask. So the focus of all of my work since then, of how I use my voice, and I'm so blessed that that tumor turned out to be manageable. I didn't do any treatment. We decided to watch and wait, and it's still there and hanging out and not moving, knock on wood. The gratitude I feel for the lesson that I got from all of that, it informs my everyday life, and it's part of why I wrote the book. It is the core of my keynote message, and I get to go and speak to everyone from students to CEOs of very successful companies. And I have found, Mitch, no matter where you are on the quote unquote ladder, we all struggle with this same question of identity and knowing who we are behind the mask, and not identifying with the success or the failure or any of the roles we play that are all temporary definitions of who we are. So this exploration for people is profound and powerful, to question, what are the masks that I wear that are limiting identities that aren't really the essence of who I am? And how can I begin to recognize when I'm really grounded in a deeper, truer sense of who I am and why I'm here and what I want to give in the world? So those questions are ongoing. I continue asking myself those questions all the time, and it makes for a very wonderful, rich, beautiful, adventurous life.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you've been an actor or singer on stage and have ideas or tips to help other artists make their shows a success, please be sure to include it in the comments below.